All people have basic human needs, such as the need for shelter, sustenance, safety, and health care. But ensuring that these basic needs are met sometimes means representation before courts and administrative bodies. When access to justice is beyond the reach of the poor, then basic human needs often go unmet, and society's promise of justice for all becomes an empty promise.
Because of the surgeries, and I had lost my job at Frito-Lay, and with the well ran dry and all the monies was going, I didn't have anything coming in, so that's how I got behind me on my mortgage payments.
Heather is actually a 20-year-old young adult in chronological age, but she is about 7 or 8 years old mentally. Who's going to be your date? Who's going to go with you?
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
Anti-rejection medication. It's very expensive. It's about $1,500 a month just for that medication alone. And I definitely need that every day of my life as long as I have the transplant.
I needed help in court. I was in an abusive family relationship. I needed legal assistance more than anything.
These are the stories of a few North Carolinians from the Charlotte area. Their lives were being turned upside down when Legal Services of Southern Piedmont helped them reclaim their dignity and rebuild their lives. Mary C. is in her 60s. She was facing foreclosure when she became the victim of a scam that robbed her of her home and her savings.
The reason I got behind on my mortgage payment is because I had 3 different surgeries. And during one of the surgeries, my well went dry. So it cost me a lot to have the meter put in, and then I had to pay a plumber separate to run the pipes. I was working at Frito-Lay, but then after the surgeries, the doctor said I could no longer do that type of work. So then I was out of work for a little over 2 years until I started work at Walmart.
At a loss as to how to make the mortgage payments, Mary was given hope when she heard an ad on her trusted gospel radio station that a mortgage services company could save her home from foreclosure.
Well, I heard about this mortgage company on gospel radio station, and they promised to help me save my home.
Unbeknownst to Mary, the ad she heard was a scam. She was defrauded into turning over her home to the company that she thought was going to help her. The deal left Mary without any proceeds from the sale of her home and eventually forced Mary out of her house. Living now in an unsafe rental, Mary faced poverty and fear in her old age. Jamie Bluto is a single mother of a mentally disabled daughter, Heather, who has a condition that makes it extremely difficult for her to speak. Heather attends a school for mentally disabled children and has only 150 words of speech. At school, Heather uses picture symbols to effectively communicate. Nevertheless, the local health department rejected Heather's application for the same communications equipment on the grounds that Heather had functional speech.
My name is Heather Bluto. I go to Metro School. I am a Special Olympics swimmer.
Mental Health had denied Heather some important augmentative communication equipment that would enable her to go through the process of transitioning from her current situation of a daily standard school and after school life to the real world of working in the job market.
Without intervention, Heather faced a bleak future where she likely would be unable to communicate effectively with others. Eventually, the likelihood is that she would be institutionalized. Betty Hawkins is in her 40s and has suffered from diabetes for most of her life. In 1999, she had to have a kidney and pancreas transplant. Betty was disabled and unable to work and received disability and medical coverage from the Social Security Administration. In 2004, Social Security notified Betty that she would no longer receive disability insurance or medical coverage.
The letter for terminating the disability or whatever was a shocker. It meant no medication, no doctor visit, and The medication was very, very expensive.
Alma is an immigrant from Mexico. She was married to a U.S. citizen. Over many years, Alma's husband abused her, physically, verbally, and emotionally. Without intervention, Alma would have remained in fear of violent abuse.
Nobody knew anything about what was going on. I wasn't able to tell. I was so worried, and I didn't feel like I had the right to worry anyone about my problem.
Each person featured here was faced with a dire, life-altering situation. Yet, unlike the criminal justice system, people with civil legal problems do not have a right to counsel, even in cases where basic human needs are at stake. But in Charlotte and West Central North Carolina, there is an organization that people with limited resources look to for reassurance, support, and hope. These people can gain access to the justice system with the help of Legal Services of Southern Piedmont.
I lived in my old house for 12 years. I love the neighborhood and I love my neighbors. We were all just like a family. I planned on staying in the house the rest of my life. The house that I live in now, I don't like it. Don't like the neighborhood. There's drug dealing on this side and dog fighting on this side, and the police is forever out here all the time at one time or another.
Mary C. is one of many elderly clients who are victims of consumer fraud. In Mary's case, a man named Mr. Allen at the mortgage servicing company told Mary that she could save her home from foreclosure by selling it to him and having her name remain on the deed.
At closing, Miss C was expecting that her name was going to remain on the deed. In fact, the paperwork did not show that. It was an outright sale from Miss C to Mr. Allen. Additionally, Ms. C was not given the opportunity to read any of the paperwork that she was required to sign at closing, and the attorney that she expected to be there to work on her behalf was actually Mr. Allen's attorney. Legal Services was successful in obtaining a judgment for Ms. C in the amount of about $90,000.
And I am very thankful to Legal Services.
As a mother, I think everyone has that strong desire to communicate with their children. I mean, it's an everyday desire that you have. And with Heather, for many, many years, she had a real inability to be able to tell me about her day. And the equipment that we'd requested, the use of the picture symbols, would be something that would enable her to continue to process what was going on in her life and to be able to communicate more effectively about it.
7 different treating clinicians said that Heather needed this equipment, and yet the Medicaid agency had refused to provide it until Legal Services got involved in Heather's case.
She actually had won her appeal before an administrative law judge, but the agency, the Medicaid agency, refused to adopt the administrative law judge's decision. So we appealed her case to Superior Court, and there we were able to convince Superior Court Judge Johnston that this equipment was required to be covered under the law.
We were quite elated to find out that Heather was finally going to get the equipment.
So, I have stomach problems and neuropathy and, back problems and muscle pain and joint pain, So that kind of keeps me from working. I wish I could work. I try to work, but I can't. Regular housework is kind of hard sometimes.
Betty Hawkins came to Legal Services because Social Security had made a decision to terminate her disability and Medicare benefits. Those benefits enabled her to pay for the anti-rejection medications she needed to keep her organ transplants from failing. She had already had one hearing, and this was her last chance to appeal.
So we went to the hearing, and much to our surprise, the judge actually was ready to rule against Ms. Hawkins, but we convinced him to hold the record open to allow us to get even more medical evidence and more medical opinions and more legal authority, and much to our relief, he did issue a decision continuing her benefits.
Really, where Legal Services really came through for me. Really, it's either that, it was a life or death situation. So they brought me life.
He was always very hurtful, verbally and physically. He treated me very badly. He was very violent. He hit me, threw me out of the car. He dragged me from the house into the night.
Alma first came to Legal Services of Southern Piedmont when she was referred to us by United Family Services Victims Assistance. She had gone to United Family Services seeking assistance in getting a domestic violence protective order against her husband, who was an American citizen. Wanted to know exactly where she was going at all times, threatening to call immigration if she called the police whenever he hit her. On one occasion, he even hit her so badly that she fell and hit her head on a metal pipe, causing her to be unconscious.
Legal Services was successful in obtaining a domestic violence protective order, which kept Alma's husband away from her. It also helped Alma file for her immigration papers under the Federal Violence Against Women Act, an immigration benefit that is available to victims of domestic violence married to U.S. citizens.
I think that I don't have to go to heaven, honestly, to find angels. They have professionalism and they have a humanitarian corazón, heart, to help people.
These are the fortunate few. Only about 20% of low-income people in the state of North Carolina who need legal services are actually being helped because of a lack of program resources. When meaningful access to the justice system isn't there for everyone in our community, it affects us all. If a person doesn't get the legal assistance he or she needs, there can be greater demands for tax-supported public housing, shelters, hospitals, families may become separated, children sent to institutions or foster homes. All North Carolinians deserve access to our judicial system, but this ideal is not yet realized. Won't you join Legal Services of Southern Piedmont in being part of the solution to help make equal access to our justice system a reality for those in our community who are most in need?